A theme that is fundamental to my educational approach is that it is far better to have a small set of transferable concepts and tools that can be applied across many different situations than to try to use a brute memorization approach to well over 100 single-purpose equations. A case in point is when you are required to calculate the WACC weights from the DE ratio, the brute force memorization approach would require that you apply the equations that you have hopefully successfully memorized prior to the exam in the blue box at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, and in my opinion, by far the better approach, is to take a fundamental and conceptual approach to the situation. We turn attention to the top of the screen and ensure that we have a clear understanding of what any ratio is. Yes, of course, it is a numerator divided by a denominator, but on a more fundamental level, it is in fact the case that a ratio represents the number of units of whatever is in the numerator per 1 unit of whatever is in the denominator. Next, we apply the fundamental corporate finance identity, which in market value terms tells us that the assets of the firm must equal its debt plus its equity. Another way of looking at the total assets of the firm is, of course, the fact that because the equation must balance, that is also the total capital of the firm. If we take the example of a debt-equity ratio of 0.5 and apply the principles that we have just addressed, we know that the DE ratio of 0.5 is in fact debt divided by equity, and that there are 0.5 units of debt for every 1 unit of equity. Having made sure that we understand that point, we now apply the fundamental corporate finance identity, and that tells us that assets equals debt, which we have identified as 0.5, and equity, which we have identified as 1, and therefore the total assets, same as the total capital, is 1.5. From here, it is an easy step to identify that the weight of equity, which is the proportion of equity to total capital, must be 1 divided by 1.5, which is 0.67 rounded. And the weight of debt will be 0.5 over 1.5, which is 0.33 rounded.